Welcome to Decide to Move podcast, where top experts share tips and strategies to grow you from where you currently are to where you are destined to be personally and professionally. Now here's your host, author, speaker, business strategist, CEO, and founder of Decide to Move, Monica M. Bijou.
Welcome to another episode of Decide to Move podcast. I'm excited for our guest today. She is a creative of all creative. She is one of the founders for Creative Folks, and she has multiple, and I do mean multiple, abilities in the graphic world. And I'm going to let her tell you all about it because of the fact that, it's so many that I'm like, man, girl, I wish I had some of your skills. So today I'm super excited to have Tammy with me today. Hi, Tammy. How are you doing?
Hey, Monica, how are you?
I'm super great.
Getting over that sickness for sure. So my name is Tammy, obviously. I started off graphic design, I want to say 8 to 7 years ago. So it's a rough timeline, surely. I started it in high school when we wanted to design like a senior hoodie. I always tell people this story because they're like, what does that have to do with anything? And I'm like, it has to do with everything. That's how my whole entire journey even started, was designing a hoodie for our senior class. And I believe it was like the previous year design, it was like really bad. And so we were like, there was no way you're going to make our design look like that. So we decided to hop on it, and I took initiative. I hopped on that. I've never been that type of person before. I was kind of more behind the scenes. And it just blossomed from there. I took a t-shirt design, made it into a hoodie. I sold the hoodie myself. I did all of the calculations, the shipping, all of that stuff. So I gained like $1,000 profit. And I was at like 18 years old. So I'm like, $1,000, I'm like rich. Now we surely know that $1,000 doesn't get anywhere as much, but I was super grateful at the time. And that kind of just kept progressing from there. I also was like a weird one. I challenged myself to not take design courses. I don't know why. Maybe in part I felt like it just wasn't for me to take design courses, so I learned it myself, and it turned into a business, a freelance business, and now it's like a full-time type of thing where we're working constantly on design projects all the dang time.
That is so amazing. I really like that. And so, like I was saying, that you have so many different modalities to what you do. Before we go into that, where exactly are you located? Where are you living right now?
In Atlanta, Georgia,
So,
my
born and
city.
raised, or are you?
Yes, all
Nice,
here.
nice. And so has that played a big part into what you do? Because I understand that one of your missions is to take the city by masses to actually provide creative in your community. Is there a particular
Hmm.
area that you live in Atlanta that you want to bring that to, or all of ATL?
I haven't really thought about it. So I have a lot of family actually in San Diego, California. So I mean, like, I want to hit all the cities, and I've been to all the major ones here in the United States. So just seeing all of that, I kind of want to hit all of them. But if we had to like answer the question to start, I would probably be here in Atlanta.
Nice. And so
Yeah.
how did you get into all the things? I know you started your t-shirt, but you have a
Hmm.
lot more than just designing of a t-shirt or a hoodie. What else do you do? What part of your creative?
So at the time, it was just like, I thought that was like the end. I was like, for my life, for the rest of my life, this is my career. I'm going to design t-shirts and hoodies for people. I quickly realized that was not a sustainable business, especially being 18, 19, going to college. I was like, there was just no way this was going to be a good business. So from there, I kind of went and expanded design into doing books, because I met a flight attendant who works for Delta, and she's probably one of my favorite people in the world, just because she gave me the opportunity at the right time. We drafted a book, or not drafted it together. She already drafted it, and then we did the book design, like the layout of it. We did the cover together and all that stuff. She sent it to be published. I still have the book today. And then that kind of just drove me into doing like layout design in college. So I started working at newspapers. I started doing magazine book layout. I still did that on the side while still working other full-time jobs while doing that. And I'm here today just learning all types of stuff, doing web design, doing social media, because we're just growing, ever growing, like always growing all the time.
And how did you come up with Creative Folks, the Creative Folks?
So that story is always so funny, because I thought to myself one day, why am I typing on Facebook all of these little comments to people. I'm typing paragraphs of comments and advice to people, and no one is giving me like a heart react. No one's like giving me a like. No one's like laughing at my post. So I said, let me compile all of that information into a blog. And so that's how the Creative Folks started, was as a blog to teach other freelance, I want to say graphic designers, but I was going for all creatives. So web design, video, all of that stuff. I wanted to teach all creatives how to do freelance because that's how I learned, not necessarily the traditional route. And then once we got there, I started getting contributors from London. I got several in Atlanta, several from other cities in the United States. We started contributing together. And then now we're here because we figured the blog wasn't as sustainable as we want it to be. So we started opening other routes of avenue for profit.
And what are some of those other avenues?
We started doing a content library, so like people can come learn with us for free. So we're still taking those aspects of learning, still providing it for people. It's not a for-profit thing, but it was to drive like brand awareness, etc. And then mainly now is doing events, and we're also doing branding work, so like design, web design, all that stuff.
Logos and different things like that.
Yeah,
That's super excited. I mean,
yeah,
I got to see and look at some of your designs, and I mean, just the layout and the way that you guys came up with everything. You truly are the
yeah.
creative folks. I actually
Oh,
love the teamwork, because you said that there's a we talked a lot before, and
yeah.
you talked about how did you come up with your team? It was people that you worked with
Oh,
before,
yeah.
volunteers, or how did you come up with your team?
So a lot of them, I don't even want to say a lot of them, all of them started off as volunteers. They kind of just saw the brand, and I guess a lot of them just worked with me before, and they felt like, okay, I can vibe with Tammy. I understand her workflow, and I understood theirs. So we just vibed really well at the right time, and they just stuck ever since. We have one teammate right now. Her name is Sheena. Shout out to Sheena. She actually started as an intern, like I want to say 6 months into the business. Like we just started. We were still a blog. She came in, wanted to be an intern for marketing because she needed the experience, and then lo and behold, now she's here forever and ever and ever and ever.
That is so great. That is so great. And so I'm super excited about the topic that you're here to talk to us about. So one of the questions that we came up with was, can you turn your passion into profit?
Hmm.
What is your thoughts around that?
So, like how we discussed earlier as well. So, I do think that you can turn a passion into profit because I am doing it now, and I think there's so many avenues to do it. But I do think there is a lot of downsides that a lot of people don't think about, especially in the beginning of it. That I do think when you want to turn a passion into profit, it takes money because if you don't have the funding for it, it's not impossible, but I think it's going to be very rough to start anything. And you can chime in on that too, since you like do business and such. Outside of the funding, I think it's market research. So if you don't have an audience for it, and a lot of people preach that every product or everything has an audience, which I agree to some extent. However, I think it takes research. I think it takes like, how can you reach that audience to make sure that it does eventually turn into profit? Because people can have a genuine interest, however, they may never purchase, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, when you talk about research and doing a market research, is super huge and important that you understand, one, who you're serving, and then
Hmm.
understand what they're needing and what their needs are.
Hmm.
Oftentimes, like when you were saying, turn your passion into profit, how if you really want to take your passion and turn it into a business, like for instance, a person who loves knitting hats, right?
Hmm.
They like knitting hats, they're good at doing hats, but it'd be kind of hard to sell, like the wool hats. It's kind of hard to sell that in sunny California where it's like super hot, or a place
Sure. Yeah.
like, you know, Florida, or a place where it's like steaming hot. You have to know where your audience is hanging out and where
Hmm.
they're doing. So like in Seattle or a ski resort or places like that. And so you're absolutely right. It's important to do that market research.
Hmm.
What are some other things that you recommend that an entrepreneur who definitely is going through, and this podcast is about people making pivotal shifts, right? Going
Yeah.
from something that they used to do before, and especially with everything happening right now with the world, is going to probably be a long time effect. So there's a
Hmm.
way that people have to do things differently, doing their research, doing their homework, and really figuring out what they love to do, but then how are they going to stay in it? You know, what's your
Hmm.
thoughts about having a passion, but if it's not making you money, what do you recommend happening from there?
So I actually went through this multiple times in business as well, or just like operating as business within the first 2 years, is that I realized that I was afraid in the beginning to speak to people because I was afraid of like quote unquote good ideas being released to the world and then someone else taking it. Um, I feel like now that I've been in the space for a little bit, I feel like if you have genuine good ideas, you can come up with them at any time. So if by case, if it does get taken by somebody else, I think you would be, since you are the original creator of that idea, I think you could do a step above that and you can create something way more. So on that note, I think it's more important to talk to people, tell people your ideas, tell them, okay, what are you thinking? What are you struggling with? Why do you think that there is like a downfall right now? Why do you not feel good in the business space? Why won't you make the jump? Something of that sort. I think if you talk to people about it, they can give you new perspectives that you didn't imagine that they could give you in the beginning. And then after you talk to those people, that builds that research behind it and it builds that passion behind it, because I think it takes passion to make it into profit, basically. And then on top of that, I think that people get very discouraged because it's not making profit that you're thinking it should be making. So I think with that, they need to be more patient. So not every idea is going to craft you into a millionaire like the next day, obviously. So if it is, I mean, like great for you, but if it's not, then I think it just takes more patience, taking more research, reading back through your ideas, going back to your, you know, your little sketchbook or your journal of ideas, whatever it is that you craft everything in, take a look at that again and think of what are the avenues that you can create for yourself outside of that one that you just made and it's not making you the profit. All right, how can we diverge and make it even better? What can we do to increase the profit there?
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And so I'm going to ask you this because of the
Yeah.
fact that, marketing is all the things you do, graphic design, marketing,
Hmm.
branding, all of that. There's a lot of entrepreneurs out there that's pursuing that. And you
Oh
said at
yeah.
one point your voice was, you didn't speak up because of the fact that you were afraid that people would steal your idea. What do you say to those people who do have, like, they're going into a market that is so that there's multiple people out there that's doing it? How do you what's your message to them so that they can step out of their comfort zone and go for it?
I think it would be important on that part is to align yourself with people who work in that space. Just because I felt like I was afraid because I felt like I was going to be a part of that competition. But if you align yourself with people who don't think of you as competition, that eliminates that whole feeling of that. I think I was surrounding myself around people who kept thinking like, Tammy, you shouldn't do it because there's so many people that are already doing it. Or Tammy, you shouldn't do this because it's already out there in the world. I kept having friends around me who kept saying like, I shouldn't do this, I shouldn't do that. And that's why I felt like, oh, I need to keep my ideas to myself or else someone's going to take it from me. But then when I started aligning myself with like the right people, and how I found those people was literally through Facebook groups. I'm telling you, like that is like my hub and I love it. LinkedIn is okay, everything else is okay, but I really truly love Facebook groups. And that's how I met you actually. So it aligns the right people at the right moment, and you start seeing like there are people out there who are doing the exact same thing that or you think that they're doing the exact same thing, but they have their own vibe, they have their own brand, they have their own consistency and their own, and then you can develop your own on your own time at your own pace. It's not like a race at all. So
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that because that is so huge. Oftentimes people get concerned about who's out there who's doing the exact same thing, but people do not add the same thing that you have, the same experiences, the same,
mhm,
like you said, the same vibe, the same, mindset that you bring to the way that you conduct your business. And I think that's super huge and important, aligning yourself around those people who are support you and not the naysayers,
yeah,
right?
mhm.
We all have those naysayers. So what would you say to a person that is surrounded around naysayers, that's telling them what they shouldn't do and what they can't do and what's not going to work for them, and so on, so on?
I think removing yourself. Like you have to make the executive decision for yourself. So my mom has always taught me to like there's no way for you to change as an individual if you don't admit that you need to change. So if I don't tell myself, I realize that A, B, and C is telling me this and that, but yet B, C, and D is telling me something else. If I don't remove myself from that situation of the other person who's negating everything, then I will never be able to like replace them and find someone who's like more positive in my life or something along those lines. So my family is always like super supportive, but they weren't enough. I felt like I needed more validation from people who were not in my circle, who never knew of me, who never knew of my skill, who never knew of my ideas, etc. Because I felt like they were going to come in with a more pure, a more I guess not too much
Unbiased.
bias. Yeah,
Yeah.
unbiased. I want to say, yeah. Because my family is always supportive. My friends are obviously going to be supportive. And then those people who've known me for so long, they're probably going to have their own biased opinion on it. So I think it's important to just remove yourself from that situation first and then go find yourself a new tribe to be with. And it's okay to do that. So,
Yeah, it definitely
yeah.
is. And I totally agree with you on that. I've actually had the experience that I had someone tell me when I was pursuing my master's in social work to become a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
Actually had someone tell me that that's not something I should do. You don't need to pursue that. You don't need to do therapy. You don't need to do one-on-one, and just this whole bit of really negative stuff. And I remember, seeking some advice and actually talking to another therapist and saying, hey, this
Mm-hmm.
person told me this. What do you think? And they're like, it's only a year. Like literally, you only have 1 year to get your master's. It's, because I had like what's considered advanced standing. So if you don't, what's the worst come to worst? If you don't decide to do something with that degree, at least you'll have your master's. And I was just like,
Yep. That's
And
fair.
then years later, that same person came up to me and apologized and said that they were basically projecting their own stuff onto me. And
Mm-hmm.
how often does that happen where you have someone who's jealous or feeling their own insecurity or wishing that they did what you did, and are doing, and so they end up telling you from the negative standpoint what's not going to work. I find that
All the time.
yeah, and to me it's disheartening, and you'll run into it in the business world, right?
Oh,
Um,
even more than you would think.
yes, and it's a very lonely. Being an entrepreneur is lonely, right? And now
Yeah,
being quarantined is like we're used to the loneliness, but
even more.
now it's important to figure out how do you, continue to connect, offline and still have
Mm-hmm.
that connection and different things like that. So how has things shifted for you from being the creative person and still being visible in what you do? How do you go about doing that?
So really, I think it's based upon relationship building. So my past clients who've worked with me when I did freelancing on my own without the team, without the creative folks, this was about like 5 years ago. Those same clients 5 years ago, and I tell my team this because they don't believe it at all. Those same clients from 5 years ago are still my clients now. I just told them like, hey, I emailed them one day like, hey, I just opened up a branding agency. I know I went on a hiatus for like 6 months just to focus on school, but now I'm back. I have a team that's ready to design, and I mean they were flooding in with orders, and I was just like, okay, let's get this rolling, etc. And so just that experience alone, connecting with people, making sure like I understood their project all the way through, just the small details too, like when they called me on the phone and they just told me, hey, I'm sorry I didn't get back to you because my kid was X, Y, and Z. Just taking notes of those kind of things makes them remember you, because I would call them back and say, how's your kid doing? Before we get to business, how is your kid doing? Or how is your business operating? Because you were telling me the other day it wasn't working out fine, or whatever, the small gist of everything. And I just figured like doing that to people made them feel like they're not just a client, they're not some number in our QuickBooks system, something of that sort. I think it makes them appreciate us a little bit more, and then they would always come back. So like even though we have all of this going on in the world, I don't feel like our business has flopped at all. It is a little bit slower, but it hasn't flopped. It definitely is still going, and I can't be more appreciative than that, for sure.
Yeah. And you said something that was super huge. What you did was you added your own special touch to how you run your business. And
Mm-hmm.
that's something that a lot of branding companies don't do, add that extra special little touch to say, hey, how are you doing from your family, a familial standpoint, not
Mm-hmm.
just from a business standpoint. And so those are those little special nuggets and things that people can do to make themselves be different than their regular than the next person who they normally
Yeah,
see as a competitor. I mean, there's enough room for all of us, honestly.
I think so.
And
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen it. I mean, I see some people who do the exact same thing that I do when the type of entrepreneurs I work with. And guess what? We're now collaborators. We're on each other's summits. We actually support each other.
Which is
I live
awesome.
in a different place than they live in. There's certain things about my style that my clients like, compared to other people's style. Or, there's something about me that they may like a different style. But the difference is,
Yeah.
like, as a professional, it's not personal, it's business. And you support your client. You figure out how to work together to support your client. And
And I mean, I think it's so elementary in some kind of way. Like, as we're talking about it, I think to other people it might click like, oh, why didn't I think of that? But at the same time, it's like whether or not you enact on it. So like one of the best things I heard recently was that I had a client. He runs a real estate business, and he recently bought like one of those semi trucks where you go deliver things, etc. And he asked me to do. He's like, oh, well, you always branded my other companies, so can you brand this one too? I just want to keep the word Madison in it because Madison is my daughter's name. And so when we jumped onto this project, he wanted a really large sign to go in the front of his real estate properties, just saying like this is his business, etc. And I said, oh yeah, like I really like how the word Madison came out because that's special to you. It's your daughter's name. It just came up in conversation. I didn't mean to make it a marketing ploy or anything. He was like, I can't believe you remember that. I was like, what do you take me for? Of course I remember, but we have real conversations when we talk. It's not just business. It's not just all fun and games. It's like literally I want to connect and I want to make sure like you use me in the future. Even if you choose to go with somebody else, I want you to remember our experience so that you come back around later for sure.
yeah, I like that. I really
Yeah.
do. And I appreciate that. And especially coming from a branding place, what you're doing is also teaching your clients how to also connect with other people, not just through their brand, but from a
Oh
personal
yeah.
standpoint as well. And
Yeah.
because you're so passionate about it, so it sounds like you actually did exactly what you're teaching other people. You actually took something that was very passionate to you and made
hmm
it a business for yourself.
Oh yeah. And I mean, like I told myself that I didn't want to do the agency route of anything at all because I felt like the struggles of being the freelancer years ago was really bad. And I just felt like, I mean, like not that I was getting scammed, but I just had to deal with a lot of low ticket. And I mean, like I felt like I can just get it full time and do this. I don't need to work day by day, check to check, paycheck to paycheck or whatever. So I just told myself I wasn't going to do this ever again. I was just going to be like a corporate marketer or a corporate like designer or something of that sort. But then when I started working with my team again, I'm like, okay, this is possible. So let me just refuel with those clients, and then hopefully that like burns all the way through, and then we can hop on hop on projects again. And it worked out very well. So it was a journey.
That is good. Was there ever a time that since you've actually got refueled, that you thought about stopping, where your passion was enough for you, or you felt like there was something else that was also needed?
I feel, I mean, as of right now, as a business too, we are discussing like, is the agency route like our forever thing? Because we do feel like in the Atlanta market, I'm sure everywhere as well, because you probably see ads for it all the time, but like marketing firms, branding firms, all of that stuff exists. Like there is one of those like literally everywhere. So do we want to become a branding firm just like anybody else who's working on like, different client works for like Delta, for Coca-Cola, all of these people? And we quickly realized, no, that's not what we want to do. We really want to target something specific, which is going back to our audience, which is creative people. So we're targeting events that are catered toward the creative community, so that we're both feeding into that while we're targeting those events to help brand those events. So what I mean by brand is like, we'll work from the lanyards, we'll work from the backdrops, we'll even get the photographer on there, we'll do the tables, we'll set it all up or something like that. We'll do all the design work for it to make sure the event is branded all the way through, which is our specialty. But making sure the event is catered for that creative that's going to attend that event. So whatever the event is, it could be like a convention, a summit, something of that sort. We just want to be part of that process for that creative individual that's going to attend.
And now that, a lot of conferences and different things are on hold. I mean, they'll be
Mm-hmm.
picking back
Oh
up,
yeah.
definitely by the end of the year. Have you guys thought of anything from an online standpoint, like having a background or something like a backdrop or something where they can use in the background to, like, with their logo or anything else similar to that, from a from online to an offline, from an offline, sorry, to an online standpoint?
hmm we've considered it. So it's not our strongest point, which is like online conventions or summits, etc. So I'm attending a lot more this during this time where we're quarantined. This is the perfect time because we're quarantined and we can pay attention to those kind of things. So during this time, while I'm watching all of these, I'm paying attention to, okay, what is like important for the user side. Since I'm going to be the one attending, I'm going to be the one witnessing what the ideal person would see when I would brand an event for them. So hopefully that goes into that all that market research which we talked about before, and also encouraging my team to go to summits, going to online conferences, or a lot of those conferences now are moving online as well. So we're going to see all of those conferences we used to go to in person, how are they going to transition online? And hopefully during that transition we'll find like that sweet spot, like, okay, now we can offer this because we know exactly what they're looking for, or what they don't have already, we can offer it now.
And that's great. And that's that ongoing research,
Yeah,
ongoing research.
all the time, never
People
ending.
people often think, I got it, and then that's it. No, it's ongoing
All
research,
the time.
especially when you want to come up with something innovative, and something
hmm
different to your audience, and continue to provide that little something different, for them.
yeah.
So, any other ideas or any other suggestions that you have for people that want to turn their passion into a business, into making profit or anything else like that?
I always preach this about like which we already talked about earlier, which is patience. I think it's so important to be patient during this time, especially within the first 1 to 5 years. I haven't been in business for 5 years, but I can foresee that for my next like 3 years going into five, the next 3 years is still being patient, still raising money, still like trying to figure out my audience, like the research behind it. Yes, we have our core audience, and a lot of people say, well, I know my audience. It's everybody. It's not everybody. Um, Surely there's going to be a more niche specific thing about them. And that's what you're going to have to define in order to grow and scale even higher than you would think you were scaling. Because I thought this was it. By the time we were in this year right now, 2 years ago, when I thought about it, I was like, this is going to be it. Where we are right now is it. But I feel like there's so much more that we can do, and it's just finding the right target. And also, people don't understand that a business can have multiple quote unquote targets, like target audiences per product. So say if you only release one product, then obviously you only have like one audience. But if you release multiple products, it could go into multiple audience, which requires a lot more research, which is why it's ongoing all the time. You're always thinking, you're always in the shower thinking, driving home thinking, all of that stuff.
And I absolutely love your passion, and it shows through, and that makes a big, huge difference when it comes to um, people working with you. Because if I have
Yeah,
working with a designer or a person who does logos or whatever, I want to see their passion shine through. If I see that it's just, yes, it's good to take your hobby and turn into a business, and your passion and turn into a business. But if I see that it's really not something that you're really passionate or love or enjoy doing, and then how much love and attention are you going to put into my work? It's kind of
right.
like a nurse that want to become a nurse just to make money, but they
Just
have
to
no
have the money.
passion
Yeah,
to work with people.
yeah.
Unfortunately, I've worked with a lot. I've worked with a
I can
lot
see
from
that.
that. Yeah, and it's hard because you can see the bedside manner is different, or even a doctor, the bedside manner is different. They're smart as a whip, they know their stuff, but there's no passion behind it, and it makes it very difficult for a person to receive anything that they have to say.
Yeah.
So
And I think on like you mentioning that, that reminds me too, just in general about the passion side of things. I think that people kind of like tunnel vision themselves. So if like say that my passion all my life was design, at some point it was, but to be honest with you, like right now is not really design anymore. It's helping others do it. So like if I can help somebody else learn how to do branding, or help them learn how to do the marketing side, which is things that I thought I was passionate about, it's not anymore. Now it's about teaching. So just like the marketing research that we have to do, it's ever growing for you to change your passion as well. So you may have stepped into business loving this one thing, but after trials and trials with clients, with all of that stuff that affect like your mentality, like business mentality, it definitely changes the game. So once I started dealing with like a lot of difficult clients who were like demanding a lot of things that I couldn't accomplish in time that I thought I could or I used to be able to do, it kind of threw me off, and it said like it made me feel like I don't want to pursue this anymore. And that's why I gave up the agency route to begin with, because I thought I was going to turn into a freelancer all my life. I thought like I'll be 50 and still freelancing or something. But I quickly realized that was not my route. And I mean, like, that's why passions keep changing. So you have to really identify the passion and be okay with it changing as well. Because when you step into business, it's all gone. Like, the
Yeah.
passion may not be there.
Yeah, and I love and what I'm hearing is that your passion is still dealing around graphic and designing and
Yeah.
branding. It's just that you've taken a different route into how you bring that forth. So instead of you doing it yourself, you're now teaching other people to be able
Mm-hmm.
to do it. So it's kind of like you still have the same passion around a certain thing. Like a person loves still to knit, but I no longer want to knit hats. I now want to knit scarves or blankets or
Mm-hmm.
something else like that. And then now I no longer want to actually do it. I want to actually teach other people. And so it's
Yep.
still in the same wheelhouse. You've just taken it in a different level and a different route. So, and that's
Yeah.
huge for people to hear and understand that they go in one way. You don't have to have everything mapped out fully. And
Oh
I
no.
think most times people go in and they feel like, okay, I need to have A through Z. I've worked with clients like that. I have to have A through Z mapped out very clear so that way I know exactly what I want to do and how I'm going to
Yep.
do it and all this other stuff. And those are great things to start off with, but just be flexible enough to know that things will change and shift. Um, some forcibly, right?
Yeah.
And then some
Of course. Yeah.
things not so much, like basically listening to yourself and understanding that it's okay to go a different route in your expertise and with your field. And you may go
Definitely.
from being the primary solopreneur to
Mm-hmm.
having 20 people up on over you, or under you, I should say, 20 people under you that you are managing. And you're like, I don't want to be the man. I don't want to oversee these
Yep.
people. Let me hire an office manager. And I
Mm-hmm.
just want to now work virtually here and there. So
Yep.
it's constant shifting as your business shifts. It's good
Constantly.
that you learn who you are and do that as well.
Yeah, and also understanding like the differences. So a lot of people have asked me as well, like the question about like the teammate thing. I feel like now that I'm looking back in retrospect, like going back to like my senior year of high school when we started doing that t-shirt thing, I didn't think that those skills were relevant till today. So now that I'm like leading these teams, I'm thinking about my time in high school. I'm like, I used to be in 11th grade afraid of people. Like I was scared like crap. Like I was scared of talking in front of people. I hated talking to people like this, like over online. And I was just that person that would just never talk to anybody. But people always told me I was creative. So I was like, okay, cool, I'm creative, but I don't like talking to you. So move along with your day. But outside of that, like I realized my senior year, I became the class vice president alongside with the class president, and that opened up so many doors just being in that role. I wasn't voted in for that role at first, but then just my involvement made me realize I really love leading people and I really love talking to people, teaching people that I never thought I was going to be into at all. And so now when I'm leading my team, I'm like thinking about high school. I'm thinking about like how did that transition even happen? And it's a miracle. So just to think um my life has changed in that way, definitely your passions are going to change that way. Any life decision you make is going to diverge into another life decision, and sometimes by force you have to make changes. Sometimes you have the privilege to make the change if you want to, but change is like one of those things that I think you are put in that to become better. So if you have to change, it's possibly a good thing.
Yeah, and I absolutely love that. And it's, oftentimes people are afraid of change. I don't know if you ever read the book, Who
Oh yeah.
Moved My Cheese? I
Yes.
absolutely love that book because it's like, for those who haven't read it, I suggest you, it's a small little book,
Oh,
but
love
it'll
it.
change your life. And I challenge you to figure out which one are you, right? Most times people are afraid of change because of fear. They're afraid of something keeping them from making that move. And like you said, at first it was kind of like I didn't like talking to people and I don't like being around people
I
kind of
really
thing.
hated it.
But what I love is the fact of, I'm going to use words to describe you, and one of those is very authentic, and
Oh, thank
it's
you.
very authentic, very real, and honest. And that's what made me connect with you right away. But
Oh,
also
thank you.
it makes me like say, this is a person that I would love to give my brand to say, hey, here you go, because of the fact of the way that you carry yourself. And a lot of people don't understand how important that is to have someone like that around them.
Yeah, and I honestly think on that part, like I thank you for the kind words, but it's not something that I don't want to say that I trained to be that way. So like if you're working in that design space or you're working in an agency space or even at there, like any position where you have to sell yourself to a client, I think it's more important to be authentic as possible, but know where are the changes that you need to make in your personality. So maybe my authentic self is being blunt, but I also have to know that clients don't take bluntness very well. So maybe be blunt, but in a way that's positive for them. So like constructive. Uh, less than blunt. So I think being authentic is a good thing, and I think if we're just honest with ourselves, we wouldn't have to feel like we have to make changes all the time to ourselves. Then when changes do come in, you're naturally able to go into those changes without feeling any type of fear. And a lot of people do ask me that too. They're like, how do you feel? How do you seem so fearless? You're not fearful of anything. And I was like, I fear a lot of things. It's just I don't show it because I'm like I feel comfortable in my space and I feel like I can transition into those changes, whatever they are, no matter what it is.
Wow, that absolutely is a great place for us to stop because of the fact that I think those are great nuggets and helping people really understand that, how do you take your passion? How do you make your passion become a business and be profitable in it, but in a way that is constructive and not just reckless and just going out there on a whim, not having a solid plan, but being flexible enough that when changes are necessary, they are. And when you have to make some changes within yourself, that you can definitely do that. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
I greatly appreciate you for that. So what do you have next, Tammy, coming up? Besides all the things that you're doing right now, what do you have next?
I think we really want to, as a team, I think we want to grow the brand a lot more. So we've always been talking about ourselves as like quote unquote the brand that is like for creatives here in Atlanta, the brand that's going to be here for creatives all over the United States. So I think it's about that time to take that into play, like, and actually make it into a thing. So we want to brand ourselves a lot more this year, not just doing the client work, not just doing the free resources, but combining those two. So possibly hosting more events under our name, sponsoring different creatives, so like podcasts like yours, maybe being a sponsor, just throwing our name out there a lot more so that people understand like, hey, like they're a brand that I really genuinely want to follow, not just like a place that I want to dump my money into. Obviously, it's a brand that I genuinely want to follow and possibly follow for the rest of my life so that I can see what they're doing and be a part of that journey. That's what I want. I want people to be into our space as a family, not just like a paying client for my t-shirt or a paying client for a logo design. Definitely become part of the family.
Yeah, Decide to Move podcast would definitely, love that.
Love
And
it.
you also have a podcast as well, and you're getting ready to start it back up. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the it's called the lightning rod. So basically me and my co-host, we get together every now and then to do, I want to say 15 minutes, and like not even up to 20 minutes, but 15 minutes of just segments of like information of like marketing tips, graphic design tips. My co-host is actually a grad school in animation. Lovely person, has a lot of knowledge for sure that I don't have in that like art school world because I decided never to go. So I give more of like the business tips while they give more of the art school tips of what it's like of living as an art student, because a lot of people have questions about it, and those who have questions about it also have questions about business life, and then the business life people also have questions about what is it like to go to school or what is it like to go to art school, because I've never been, or like I want to go but I don't know what it's going to be like. So that kind of meets in the middle there, and it's really fun to do just because I get to just splurge all that information out, and I don't have to type in a blog post because now I really hate typing, and I started off all of this typing.
But what's so great now with all the technology, you can actually speak your blog out, like you can
Yeah,
talk and then just let it get transcribed, which I think is absolutely great. And that's one of the things that I'm looking forward to doing is really getting
yeah,
my stuff out there and working on. Well, I have a VA that's helping me as well
yeah.
because there's so much information I have, but just the time alone just makes it very difficult as
Yeah.
well. And
And I
so
want to speak it, that information, it needs to be spoken with like a vibe, a passion, and all that stuff. Because typing it, I was just like, my editor was telling me that I type how I talk. So it's not really good structure. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm just gonna hop on podcast format because I can't type apparently. Because when I type it out, I feel like I have to be professional. I have to be like make it like readable for other people. But when I talk, I feel like you can hear the passion, or like you can at least feel authenticity behind it. I don't want to be like one of those blogs for the magazines or whatever.
Yeah, or doing a vlog, right? The small little
Yeah,
segment that's totally different from your podcast. And
yeah,
I'm looking forward to hearing your podcast, and just, like when you get it lit back up, just let me know, keep me informed, because I
yeah. I
definitely
will
want to
send
make
them to
sure that
you.
myself and our my viewers also follow you as well. So what are some of the
Lovely.
ways that we can follow you on social media?
So very simple. We thankfully we grabbed this name before it was taken by somebody else. Now we're starting to see other people mimic our name online, which is like really bizarre. So it's at the Creative Folks for everything, for Facebook and Instagram. Our website is thecreativefolks.org actually, because we thought about starting it as nonprofit in the beginning, but it quickly didn't turn into that. So now it is for profit, but it doesn't matter for us. So those are the platforms, and now we're starting to see people come up with account names that are like the Folks Creative, or like the Creative Folk without the S at the end. It's just really bizarre, and it's really flattering at the same time, because it's like we grabbed it first before they got it.
Yeah, and ensure that you haven't had it trademarked. Ensure that you do that. I'm not an attorney, but I've been
Yeah.
around enough to know trademarking is super important, right? We're
That
gonna
is
have,
so on the list.
yes, have several on the podcast soon. And but during my summit, I had the privilege of having two different um, lawyers that was on,
Oh,
and one was
cool.
a tax attorney, and one was like, she does like all about your, she talks about different buckets and the different
Oh,
parts
I
of
see.
your business, started from the beginning to the end. And I will be having both of them on Decide to Move podcast as well, so I'll make
Love
sure
it.
that you,
Can't wait for those.
yeah, it's going to be super exciting, because they'll be talking about making sure that you keep your money and your assets and different things like that. So,
Mhm.
but thank you so much, Tammy. I greatly
Yeah,
appreciate everything that you've shared with us today, of
yeah,
how to ensure that we take our passion and turn it into a profitable business. And that way we are not getting ourselves stuck in a rut, or how to actually make that adjustment and how to make those changes. And so if you
yeah.
guys haven't already followed the Creative Folks, I definitely recommend that you do so, because I love her illustration, I love her brand, I love everything that she has to provide. And as you can see, that she's truly authentic. And I thank you, Tammy, for joining us today.
Oh, thank you. You're so kind. I love you.
Thank you. You have a great day.
You too. Have a good one.
You too.
Thank you for listening to Decide to Move podcast with Monica M. Bijou. If you are ready to grow personally and professionally in order to take your destined position in the world, then schedule a free clarity call at bit.ly/call with Monica. That's bit.ly/call with Monica, or visit us at decidetomovepodcast.com for all links mentioned today and listen to previous episodes. Also, don't forget to subscribe and rate us on iTunes or your favorite listening platform.